Hello, everybody. It's the Bill and Burt Show, and I'm Burt, and by process of elimination, this is Bill. Say hi, Bill. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, my friend.
Okay, we're going to talk today about blue star futures, and we kind of touched upon that at our last conversation, but I'd like to devote this session entirely to the whole concept, and let's start in general and then go down to the particular. So, first of all, what is a blue star future? Can you describe it for everybody?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of the backstory first. What I really want to focus on and dedicate the rest of my life to actually is the supporting of what I see to be an evolutionary shift that is of the same magnitude as the digital age, but has to do with taking our social forms, our organizations, our human systems, our governments, our corporations, our educational institutions, our religions, etc., to achieve the same kind of multiplicative breakthrough in terms of the ability of these systems to serve all life. The same magnitude that is being brought to us by this miraculous digital age, which is permitting you and I to be talking face to face.
That's right.
And celebrating each other's beauty while you're hanging out in Florida and I'm in California. So what has grabbed me in my work to support this great evolutionary shift is that we tend to have a global culture of problem solving, and you do not find a very imaginative picture of what we can achieve as humans if we escape if we're able to transcend the limitations of our existing social forms. And so the blue star future is simply a template that I've created, which describes 5 dimensions of a future. And here I'm thinking of a future for a region or for a city. And what my goal here is with the blue star, is to accomplish more than the North Star used to accomplish. So the North Star, for people in the Northern Hemisphere, served as a navigation aid. So nobody ever reached the North Star, but by using it as the Polaris, it aided navigation considerably, and it helped people in reaching destinations that were over the horizon, that were beyond what we're able to see. So with the blue star, I looked at, okay, what would help us, what vision of the future region, a future city, would help us transcend all of the polarizing arguments and debates and conflicts. What is it that we all could support? What is it that would ought to inspire everyone? And so I developed a 5-point star. And each of the points has a dimension that feels to me to help us transcend our current problem-solving mentality. So the first point is fulfilling work for everyone. So there's no lack of work to be done on this planet. There's no lack of work to be done in constructing physical infrastructure, cybernetic infrastructure, in developing approaches to develop each other. There's no lack of work to be done. And it seems to be true that if people have fulfilling work, that it is joyful for them. It is happiness producing. It satisfies an extraordinarily important need. So that's one point. Did you have a question?
Not yet.
Okay.
I have one, but I want you to keep on going.
Okay. Well, don't hesitate to interrupt because I can go on a string.
Sure.
The second has to do with the opportunity for everyone to go full Maslow.
Maybe we an explanation of what that is.
Yeah. Well, many people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy. And actually, he had 7 levels, but we've since grown it to 8 levels. And the notion is that the most basic needs of people are physiological. They have to do with having food, being warm enough, cool enough, clothed enough, etc. The second level has to do with safety. The third has to do with belongingness, being a part of a community, a family, a workforce, whatever. The fourth, esteem, that they feel like they're worthwhile, that they are making a difference. The fifth is cognitive. It's the opportunity to explore, to inquire, to learn. And the sixth is aesthetic, the opportunity to create beauty, the opportunity to express your creativity in that way. The seventh level is self-actualization, to be able to be fully able to express who you are and give the gifts that you have to give. And to feel complete in yourself, to be able to access happiness and peace, no matter what the conditions. And the last is self-transcendence, or serving the larger whole. And we have a world in which a very large percentage of the population is not able to satisfy the first 2 levels, the lowest levels. Mm-hmm. And so there's an enormous amount of pain and suffering throughout the planet, in almost every part of the planet. But we have the potential as humans to evolve our systems in a way that supports everyone going full Maslow. We're not limited in resources to support that, but our systems do not. We have a third member of this party here.
My cat just made his mandatory cameo.
Anyway, it would be a very different world if everyone had the opportunity to go full Maslow.
Yes, and a Blue-Star community, the residents would.
That would be a part of their vision of the future. And with each of these star points here, it stretches you outside of that which is possible with today's systems.
Okay.
So it challenges us to get outside of the box of our limiting beliefs. It challenges us to look at our social forms in ways that support moving toward the Blue Star goals.
Mm-hmm.
The third point, the star goes way beyond sustainability and gradually reducing the damage we're doing to nature, and sees us as co-creative partners with the rest of nature. And what we know is that when you enter into that kind of relationship with nature, she indeed does turn out to be a co-creative partner. And much magic can flow out of a relationship of that quality. The fourth point it's kind of implicit in all of the other points so far, and that has to do with redefining success in terms of contribution to the well-being of life. So a big shift in our social forms is to have the contribution of every one of our organizations, every one of our governments, every one of our industries, our corporations, our institutions, that a part of their purpose has to be to make a positive contribution to the well-being of all life they impact. Now, that's a difficult challenge because we really aren't able to see all of the impacts of what we do. So it demands, this particular point on the star demands that we begin to get conscious, that we begin to do a better job of understanding what's the relationship between the choices we make as systems and what is the ripple effect. Where is life affected, and is it affected in a positive way? So that's the fourth point. The fifth point is that, in contrast with essentially all of today's traditional systems, it is possible to design our human systems so that they are more like living, conscious, caring, living systems than like machines. And we have been using the smooth running machine as the ideal for organizations. Not that all of them are smooth running, but that's their ideal too often. And so what is more natural is for us to realize that our human systems are alive.
Yes.
That they have a consciousness, that they have capacities,
mm-hmm.
and have responsibilities as entities.
Right.
So
aren't creative or flexible or able to evolve by themselves.
Right. So the notion is that our systems can be designed so that they are continually kind of scanning their horizon, their environment, their stakeholder populations, and continuously looking for ways to improve their contribution to the well-being of their stakeholders. And it used to be that designing an organization as a machine was really quite efficient and effective when the world wasn't changing very much. But today we have a world, what we call a VUCA world. VUCA, it's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it's getting more VUCA all the time.
It's kind of an update on Nasty, Brutish, and Short. Okay.
So organizations that are able to self-evolve are going to be more resilient, more creative, more able to collaborate with the various stakeholders, more able to deal with uncertainty, more able to create an environment within their systems that supports everyone in the system developing themselves and developing their part of the system on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Bill, do you know if anything like this has been tried elsewhere?
Well, there is, in case you haven't noticed, I'm quite ancient, and
I didn't, because my eyesight is gone.
no, but I've witnessed an emergence of a movement in this direction that began probably 60 years ago, way back in the in the middle of the last century, where Eric Trist and his colleagues came up with what they call socio-technical systems design, where they really began to emphasize designing for the social aspects of the organization, as well as the technical, the manufacturing, the production, the service, etc. And then in the 60s, and so that became quite a movement, and there's a lot of manufacturing throughout the planet that has, through the years, been designed on that basis. So there's manufacturing plants with team-based, technician team-based designs, where it's really concerned for, where there's a lot of authority and responsibility is placed at the work face. The best example of what I describe here, I was fortunate enough to come across in the 70s. And it's a Procter & Gamble plant, paper-making plant, Charmin Tissue, in Albany, Georgia. And so this was a plant that was constructed in 1973. And it blew me away. It was when I was first getting into the field of organizational change work. And I came across Herb Stokes, who was the architect of that effort. And he became my personal mentor and coach and consultant, and he also got myself and some of my managers in to visit that plant. So I visited the plant a couple of times, and so it's a good example of that.
Okay, I think did you reference something in New Zealand along these lines?
Marilyn and I visited New Zealand in 2011, and we were invited to give a presentation that was hosted by the mayor of Wellington, which is the capital of New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And she brought together regional leaders from around Wellington. And we made a presentation of the material that was the precursor of what we'll be talking about during our sessions.
Okay.
And but it turned out that the concept of the blue star captured the attention of a couple of the people there, and they began to meet and gather around the notion of what did they want the blue star for Wellington to be. Mm-hmm. So it was a fairly that was not a significant effort in that it engaged with a lot of people, but it did capture the imagination of a few people back then, and it's still alive.
It is alive. Okay. Okay. Do they have results that?
No, it's like I say, it's more a circle of people who are interested in exploring it, and so they need what it is that I want to have happen here in the Bay Area.
I understand.
So they got their consciousness tweaked just by the possibility of reaching a blue star.
Mhm.
And what excites me is a path that actually moves you towards such a vision for our region.
Okay. You quoted Einstein elsewhere to the effect that the problem can't be solved by the mindset that created it. So
Right.
if we're going to solve these persistent societal problems, we'll have to step outside the current business as usual model.
Right.
How does one do that? Is that, okay, I'll do that? Or is it more complicated than that?
It's much more complicated than that. It's hard to underestimate the degree to which our existing belief sets are the water we swim in, are like water to fish.
Right.
And so what we have developed is what we call a 5-day seed GALE. And by GALE is an acronym for Generative Action Learning Ecosystem. So basically, within any given system, like a corporation or a government, you have an ecosystem there. You have people that are engaged with each other. They're doing work. They are interdependent, and it's a living system that's maintaining itself. And so there's a congruence between the structures there and the beliefs. And what we're looking at here is a fundamental shift in some of those beliefs. And just pulling one person out of the system and exposing them to different beliefs doesn't change the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's sort of like the imaginal cell story. Have you?
Yes.
That yet? Just to touch on the highlights, in the process of metamorphosis, the caterpillar creates a cocoon and then in essence kind of dissolves, and the new cells of the butterfly are beginning to multiply, but the immune system of the caterpillar still exists initially and is killing off those cells, but they multiply faster and faster until they begin to multiply faster than the immune system can kill them off. And they begin to clump and cluster until finally they see that they are a butterfly. And so it's a similar process that we need to go through in our organizations. And so the strategy we use for supporting an organization that is committed to such a metamorphosis is to identify the people in the system. And these need to be people who are kind of the leaders of the future. They are people who are innovators and early adopters. They are people who love developmental work, who can see the whole picture, who can think systemically, who are credible with the leaders. There are people who are impatient with the status quo and things that aren't working well. And so we bring them together, a couple of dozen of them, for a 5-day chrysalis experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's within that chrysalis, within that insulated meeting space, that we go through a number of processes that support people in thinking outside of their box and in exploring outside of their box. So, for instance, we will lead off with the group stringing the beads,
Mm-hmm.
Sitting in circle and each speaking their mind and speaking what's important to them, what's cooking for them, what do they want from this session. And so everybody hears everybody. That's a little bit different than it works within most of our systems. Then we will I'll work with them as a group and ask them as individuals to speculate as to what they think are the limiting beliefs that they've used in constructing their particular box. So everyone has their box of their limiting beliefs. Okay, what do you think yours are made out of?
Okay.
Okay, what do you think might be some of the walls of construction materials for your box, Burt?
What are mine?
Just one or two.
Yeah. Okay. One of them is that I'm afraid of failure, and the other is that I'm afraid of success sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, it has you be cautious.
Yes. Absolutely. I should be bold
and careful.
Yeah.
So a part of this is we have everybody give thought to that, and then we collect that so that we can all see what we think are the building materials for the walls of our box.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll ask them, say, okay, we're spending a week exploring outside the box.
Right.
In various ways. What's your personal strategy for busting outside of your box, for exploring outside of your box?
Okay. All right. Is that a general question, or is that directed?
Oh, let's go for it.
Okay. How do I get out of my? To tell you the truth, I hired an agent to do that I don't want to do, and she succeeded. So,
Okay.
no, but it's a matter of some of these limiting beliefs we impose on ourselves. Others are imposed on us by society.
Right.
You're too old to do this. You can't tell that story because you're not the right color, or religious belief or something. These are imposed on us, and that's their story about me. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to act on my story as conceived by yours truly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, an aside here, I noticed that your picture is rimmed in yellow,
Mm-hmm.
and mine is not. And I'm wondering if it's only recording you.
No, I think I'm not getting, that would be a disaster, but I can only do that when I hit the replay.
Uh-huh.
I'm not getting anything in yellow. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I don't know, as far as I know, it just says recording.
Oh, okay. Cool. In any event, back to our story here. What we're doing is we're beginning to make visible things that normally are invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And when people hear each other talk about what their box may be constructed of, and they hear each other talk about their personal strategies, that begins to shift the nature of what they're able to see. Okay, so that's just an early kind of an icebreaker thing.
Yeah.
That may happen. But then as we go through the week, this is a very carefully designed chrysalis that has the imaginal souls, if you will, clump and cluster in different ways. So one of the ways in which we have the players, let's say there's 24 of them, we put them in what we call co-creative coaching trios.
Mm-hmm.
And they spend a couple of hours each day in those trios. And the object is for them to really support each other in moving outside of their boxes. And so we invite them to be exploring what we call their 10x commitments.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what would it be like if Burt Kempner were making 10 times the lasting difference
Mm.
to the people that you're serving
Yes.
and in your life? So we ask you to look at two different kinds of 10x commitments over the course of the week.
I see.
One has to do with what would be a 10x shift in your relationship with yourself or your relationship with others. So it's kind of relationship oriented. And another would be what would be a 10x shift that you want to make out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
that you want to make in the systems that you're living in. And so the idea is, this is not like a New Year's resolution. This is like, what is it that I want to take a stand for? And so it's a little bit like the blue star. You go way outside of what you think is possible as a means of encouraging you to think different thoughts. But also, as you point out, I got an agent. You're going for something that you can't get to just with your own juices.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and making alliances is I think paramount. And if we're going to cooperate rather than claw each other to death.
So the co-creative coaching trio form,
Mm-hmm.
which is a major structural configuration for the 5 days, supports people developing an intimate relationship with two others that they don't know especially well, in support of each other's 10x commitments.
Mm-hmm.
And we lead off the first day, we have them spend the entire time just telling their story. And it's their story of how they learn. What have been the primary learning milestones in their life, or incidents, or situations that supported them being who they are today. And so this is a very, very crucial step in terms of developing what I call co-creative relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the co-creative coaching sessions, it's not a matter of giving advice or problem solving at all. It's about really serving as a sacred mirror, really reflecting what's possible, challenging the other person to go outside of their particular box.
Sacred mirror, I like that.
So, so there's various configurations during this 5-day session. They have strategy teams where they're grouped and clustered, and collectively they begin to get a real sense of the system they're in and what represents a vision for the future of the system and what represents the key leverage points to focus on to begin to move toward that vision. So all of that is happening, and you're gradually growing a sense of trust and a sense that this group of 24 people really are a living entity, and it becomes a seed gale, a version of what's possible in the larger system. The way this is designed to then impregnate the system is to the organization continues to support that cohort,
Mm-hmm.
that group of 24, if you will. And they spend maybe a few months where they're just developing their own relationships with each other and sharpening their skills. And then they're getting additional help from change experts, and they select, or they are challenged by the organization to work in support of change in a particular part of the organization where there is a commitment to that change.
Mm-hmm.
And I say organization, it could be city, it could be region, but basically this is an approach which enables a requisite variety and a critical mass of key players who are committed to serve as stewards for the future, for that organization, for that city, for that region, but with the support and authorization of the larger system they're serving. Okay. So the whole Gale approach, the growing this generative action learning ecosystem is a case of planting something that will grow and spread and evolve itself in a way that it serves the larger system, the traditional system, and it serves it in gradually evolving itself in ways that help it multiply its lasting contribution to its stakeholders. And in the final analysis, the survival, much less thriving, of any of these systems depends upon them getting increasingly conscious and effective about serving their stakeholders.
Great. You said at the beginning of this discussion, Bill, that it's your heart's desire to get one of these Gales working. Well, have at least one going, hopefully more. And then a little later, you referenced the Bay Area. Why do you think the Bay Area is such an excellent candidate for this?
Thank you. Well, it was over 30 years ago that when I was living in Holland and I was about to leave Exxon, and I could live anywhere in the world I wanted to, and I did a fair amount of research and settled on the Bay Area. And the reason I chose the Bay Area are also reasons why it's a wonderful place to give birth to this next great evolutionary movement. It is, it's a very rich part of the world. And when I say rich, I mean in the largest sense of that term. So I like Ethan Rowland's 8 Forms of Capital that came from permaculture, and the 8 forms of capital or material capital, the things, intellectual capital, that's your knowledge, cultural capital, that's your patterns, your habits, your relationships, etc. Social capital would be the quality of your relationships, your ability to influence. Spiritual capital, your sense of who you are and who we are together. The experiential capital, that's what we learn by doing. Living capital, all of life, all of our plant and animal life that we are stewarding. And ultimately, financial capital. And so the Bay Area is rich in all of those. And it is, it has been a hotbed of creativity in many of those realms. Silicon Valley is part of the greater Bay Area. It spawned the digital age.
Right.
And what I like about the Bay Area is it has in addition to being wonderfully beautiful and having great climate and it's an extraordinarily heterogeneous mix of cultures. It also has exactly 100 towns and cities that make it up. Mm-hmm. And I see the city as probably the ideal unit of design for supporting the evolution of our social forms. Mm-hmm. And a city is, it's large enough to be significant, certainly for the people living in it. And it's small enough to be called home. And a city has a certain stability to it. It has a built infrastructure, it has patterns of living and culture, etc. So, and it turns out the cities are more able to escape at least some of the cities, are more able to escape the traps of bureaucracy, and that's beginning to happen throughout the planet. And so the idea is to, in focusing on the Bay Area, is to find, okay, where is the first city or town in the Bay Area where there is leadership that's willing to go for its version of a blue star.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be something that everybody in the city goes for, or even all of the systems, but it needs to have the support of the primary traditional systems, the primary traditional constituencies. And so you're seeking and you're interviewing, and you end up identifying folks who are willing to make that their work.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, and in essence, they become an infrastructure. They become an entity that's designed to support growing the capacity of all of the other living systems.
I see.
And I think the way, given the digital age and the connectivity we have around the planet, that as soon as one of these cities begins, there are going to be other cities, both in the Bay Area and elsewhere on the planet. And this is a game of collaboration and co-creativity.
Yes.
This is a shift from the finite game of organizations that is pervasive around the planet to the infinite game that exists throughout the rest of nature.
Right. Okay, let's try an imaginative exercise here, Bill. Let's say that the Blue Star gods smile on us and we have a successful Bay Area initiative. So let's jump ahead 3-5 years in the future. And what sort of tangible results will we be seeing at this point? What's going to be different? What's going to be the same?
Okay, let's take. Let me point to a real city. It's called Vallejo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on the north shore of the bay, and it's one of the troubled cities. It's actually the most diverse city on the planet, and it is. It's troubled in that the educational system is badly broken,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a lot of violence. Their per capita murder rate is high. There's a lot of poverty, but it also is a very attractive location. So it has a lot of potential, and so 3 to 5 years down the line, assuming that the leadership in Vallejo want to go for the Blue Star, and they get the support of their government and and some other institutions to be heading in that direction, what we would find there would be a major shift in terms of how they see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in 3 to 5 years, you won't have changed everything, but you will have, I'm sure that the educational system will be one of those that is addressed very explicitly early on. And there's a lot of energy in Vallejo to do something about the educational system, and they're trapped by their bureaucracy right now. So I think they would be seeing real movement there. They would be seeing an increased sense throughout the city that they are committed to the whole city. And I don't mean everybody would be, but there would be conversation about Vallejo as a living entity, and people who are dedicating themselves to supporting organizations in multiplying their contribution to the well-being of life in Vallejo and beyond.
There's a saying attributed to Gandhi. It says, first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win. And so I was wondering, what do you see as obstacles to seeing this come about? Money always has to be a factor. Anything else?
Well, money actually is not the biggest obstacle to start with. It's like breathing. You need a certain amount of oxygen to keep going or eating. But what is really needed is the spaciousness, the chrysalis, the opportunity for slowing down and diving deeply into looking at how we're constraining ourselves with our systems. And so this 5-day event is a major commitment. So you're asking people to really, to set aside their cell phones and their computers and to insulate themselves from the rest of the world, to focus on the future for that city and to focus on themselves. Mm-hmm. And so there's this is new territory. We don't have examples that we can point to that says, okay, let's follow this template. It's a question of pioneering new territory. So the challenge is in finding people who are in potent positions who will take the time to really understand what this possibility can be for them, for their organizations, for them as individuals, but mostly for the all of life in their city and beyond. And as it begins to get traction, there will be, the need to invest these different forms of capital. And so part of the secret is to only work with those that are committed.
Right.
And not really worry about getting even the early majority on board until you have, you've really established a strong rapport and alignment among the innovators and early adopters.
Mm-hmm. I assume we can imagine some resistance from those people whose financial and maybe emotional well-being lies in keeping business as usual.
Yeah, no, we can count on there being resistance to change. But what I found in working with change mostly in the corporate world for over 40 years is that most people who are alive and able and growing really enjoy change. What they don't enjoy, and this is true for almost everybody, is being changed. And so this business of working with those who are committed is crucial. Mm-hmm. And working, and then as you develop the capacity of people to help systems change, you work with the systems that want to change. And they want to change because it's important to them. And usually, if it's important to them, they will deal with whatever discomfort and awkwardness and inner resistance is implicit in that movement.
Okay. What do you have to say to the people watching this? How can they help bring this about?
We're at the very embryonic stage here. And what what you're helping me do is to tell a complex story. And so at this stage, what is most helpful is if you're intrigued by this, if you can picture a city where wants to happen, or an organization where you'd like to see this happen, to contact me. It's very, very useful to be working with specific challenges, with concrete issues, to be able to shape the story to make it more accessible to other people.
Right.
So that's the most immediate thing, and that could lead to to an actual city that where there is a critical mass and a requisite variety of these game-ready infinite players.
Terrific. Terrific. I'm out of questions. What would you like to add, Bill?
Well, what I would this is big. The seeing our social forms as having the potential to become conscious and caring and self-evolving is big. That's a big shift from a collection of bureaucratic machines.
Yeah. Amen.
Okay, so we humans are a product of a few billion years of evolution. We have our roots in a DNA that was invented, 3.5 billion years ago, 3.5 million millennia ago, a long time ago. That came forward with this structure, and then all of biology has emerged from that, including us. So somewhere along the line, the designers, whoever it is that resulted in this incredibly elegant arrangement of physical and biological and electric circuitry, did a fantastic job. We're self-healing. We have moved toward becoming increasingly conscious. We procreate, for God's sakes. And how do we procreate? Well, we have what we call sex. and that has been designed to be quite attractive, quite compelling. It gets a lot of attention. So we're reaching a stage in our evolutionary journey where we need to bring and imbue to our social forms the same kinds of capacity to grow and learn and care and become increasingly conscious and increasingly responsible, increasingly mature as those systems. I would argue that we need to invent the work of co-creation so that it is as exquisite for the people engaged in that process as is true in biological procreation. So we need to come up forward with the social orgasm, if you will.
Okay.
And this begins to happen, within the 5-day experience. You find that, look, you're investing an enormous amount of time and energy in interacting with me around the game that we're talking about right now. That energy is the energy of co-creation. We're working together in the service of moving forward, of shifting the evolutionary needle. And there's a joy in working with others who share that. and whose gifts are complementary, if not synergistic.
Yes, yes, and yes.
That's my final.
Bill, thank you so much. We're going to be back with another topic shortly. And thank you for watching, everybody. This is the Bill and Burt Show. And we wish you a good and productive day. Thanks. Bye.
Bless you, Burt. Thank you.
And you, Bill.